Hi there, They See New Readers. I am here with the wonderful and incredible Irshad and Angie. If you don't know who she is, you are going to find out more about her. But she's here in Toronto talking about a very, very, very interesting, important issue about women and the issue about multiculturalism. So let's dive right into that right now.
Right.
Talk to me about this,
Yeah.
because I mean it's a huge debate, multiculturalism in itself within Canada.
Right. So actually, multiculturalism around the world has become a huge debate because a lot of societies don't know how to, frankly, coexist and get along.
Right.
And this is not about, hand-holding and that kind of harmony, what I'm talking about. In fact, the question that I was addressing during this visit in Toronto is multiculturalism bad for women?
Mm-hmm.
And specifically what I mean is this. The vast majority of cultures that we're aware of around the world, including right here in Canada, are patriarchal, meaning that the demands, the drives, and desires of men carry more weight, and in some cultures, as you know, much more weight than those of women.
Right.
Now, you take that reality check and you pair it with the fact that the aim of the multiculturalism policy is to preserve cultural traditions from which immigrants come.
Right.
What we get then is the hard fact that that sometimes Canada's aspiration to gender equality bumps up against the desire for cultural diversity. So how do we move forward? And the way I've addressed that question is to say that, frankly, multiculturalism as a policy has served its purpose, and it's time to say goodbye to the policy. The reality is still here, and it's a wonderful reality. But I don't know if this is your experience, Angie. My experience with young Canadians who are of color is that much more often than not, they want and need to drop the hyphenated labels. They're tired of being asked, where do you come from? No, where do you really come from?
Right.
And of course, we all know that question is about where do your parents come from. But isn't it interesting that so often, not always, but so often, we are assumed to be the baggage of our parents, rather than as independent individuals and human beings who are capable of self-reflection and personal growth. And more I'm hearing from, young Canadians that it's time. It's time to drop multiculturalism as a mindset, but then the question becomes, what's the alternative?
Right.
And the alternative is what I call diversity. Now, wait a minute. What's the difference, right?
Because they're always being used
absolutely interchangeably.
Exactly.
Interchangeably. Yeah. But they're not interchangeable. And that's the big takeaway.
So tell me what the difference is then.
So diversity is about more than your skin color, my religion, somebody's gender, and somebody else's sexuality. Okay? Those are all labels. Diversity is also about what happens up here. Diversity of thought, of opinion, of viewpoint. And let's get real, individuals within the same cultural community often don't think the same, and frankly are sick and tired of self-appointed elders deciding for everybody else that this is what we stand for, we meaning people who look like me, this is what we stand for, and anybody within the community who has a different point of view can basically go to hell.
Right.
Okay.
Because they're not within that same template, realm,
right.
Tradition, culture.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, a couple of points here. What that means is, first of all, that diversity is deeper than multiculturalism. It means teasing out the individuality of people within cultural communities and not just, communities themselves. And the second thing that's important to add here is that, different points of view, which is what diversity is about at rock bottom, will offend different people naturally, because not everybody will have the same point of view. Not everybody is socialized the same way. So we as Canadians have to come to grips with the hard truth that offense is not a problem to be avoided at any price. Frankly, giving offense and taking offense is the price of honest diversity.
So
and that's really tough for people to swallow.
So if we're looking then at the next generation, my kids, my grandkids,
Yeah.
you know, your nieces and nephews, etc., sort of where does that take them down the road? And more specifically, where does it take the female population down the road?
So you know what? Apart from what I've already said about how women are often at a disadvantage within multiculturalism, I'm not really interested in compartmentalizing women from men. Here's where I'll tell you that I think there's real opportunity for your kids, their grandkids, and my nieces and nephews. In schools, what if schools replaced Multicultural Day with global citizenship exercises? Let me give you an example. Suppose that your kids were asked in class, write down on a piece of paper those questions about your family or about your classmates that you've never asked out loud because you worry that someone's going to get mad at you for thinking that question. Write those questions down. Now, share those questions with a classmate, and your classmate will share his or her questions with you. Discuss between yourselves. And then in the report back, we're going to find out about some of the most interesting questions that have been asked between the two of you. And what that does is a couple of things. First of all, it gives young people the permission to ask questions out loud and about uncomfortable topics. And why is that important? Because these are the kinds of topics that already hamstring, already limit policymakers. So this is really about creativity and about finding new solutions to old problems by taking the limits off of our thinking.
And
that's
thinking outside the box.
Well, exactly right. That's exactly the point. And secondly, it also helps a new generation develop the confidence and the courage to go there, to get innovative. And let's face it, that's what, for your kids, that's what the next several decades is going to be about. Okay, so it starts with a question about identity. This conversation, you know, why is multiculturalism often bad for women? But it doesn't end there. That's only the starting point. The larger vision, the bigger picture here, is about innovation and creativity. And I think, Angie, that our country, Canada, has a golden opportunity to lead the rest of the world in what it means to practice diversity.
So what kind of reaction did you get from, you know, your audience when you were talking about this? Because I'm sure some of them, I mean, as we've talked about, multicultural in itself can be very, very convoluted and misconstrued, and it's good and it's bad and whatnot. And then you throw in diversity in there, and they're like, "Well, aren't we talking about the same thing?"
Right.
Well, we're not.
No, we're
not. So what was the kind of reaction that you got from people?
First of all, there was a lot of love in that room.
Good.
Okay, so I was very, very happy to absorb and embrace that because, frankly, I'm not used to that. Secondly, there were some great questions and often challenging questions. One woman got up and said, okay, I hear you about the difference between multiculturalism and diversity. Here's my concern. Racism still exists, right? What do we do with that? And the way I answered is that I told her about an email that I got not so long ago from a woman named José in New Brunswick. She said, I was holidaying on the seaside in New Brunswick not so long ago, and I saw a large number of women in hijab, in Muslim headscarves. Right. And she was honest enough to say, and it bothered me, because I always have in the back of my mind the question, is that really your choice? And then José went on in that email to say, when I reflected on my own question, I realized that that's not really what's bothering me. What's bothering me is that I don't feel free enough to approach these women to ask, is that really your choice? And then José did something that even high-minded scholars often aren't able to see. She pointed out that when we don't feel permitted to engage honestly with each other because we fear offending, then the walls go up further. Right. Suspicions rise even more. We wonder to ourselves, what don't they want me to know about them? What's their agenda? And what are they trying to hide? And it's actually very irrational. There's no real rationality to it. It's very emotional. Exactly right. And you get that. And so the bottom line to José's email, and she pointed this out, is that in the name of cultural sensitivity, often we are practicing us versus them.
Yes.
Okay? So instead of lapsing into that trap over and over again,
Right.
let's ask questions.
Right.
And invite people to ask uncomfortable questions of us.
I want to switch gears a little bit. I was doing some research about you, and you're going to be back in Toronto at the end of April.
Right.
You've got a, I guess it's a, I'll just throw it out there,
Yeah.
moral courage.
Yeah.
And I read up about it, and you're going to be actually at my old high school, Bishop Strawn, which
That's
is where
your old high
that's
school?
my old high school. So you're going to be over there.
2 and 2 really does make 4. I get it now.
And
All the cool girls go to Bishop Strawn.
And you're going to have kids coming from around the GTA, grades 9 to 12, talking about moral courage. You have a website, moralcourage.com.
Right, exactly.
And on that site, Moral Courage TV, where you get students to talk about issues and, what they think is right, what they think is wrong.
And why.
Expressing that moral courage.
That's
Talk
right.
to us a little bit more about that, because I find that's sort of the direction we need to be getting our youth going into, considering the type of environment they're living in is very different compared to the type of environment you and I lived in.
So let me ask you this before I answer your question. How would you describe today's environment as compared to the ones in which we grew up?
Well, if I look at my older daughter, who's 19, and looking at her, I know, stop laughing at me, her experience in high school, very cliquey. It was very, you were judged quite a bit. Not by, I mean, when I went to high school, I was one of 4 brown girls, first of all. And it was like, you were automatically singled out. You automatically stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Here, if you don't look a particular way, if you don't act a particular way, it's not about your marks, it's about who you are and who you know and the types of things that you're involved in. Starts to define you. The pressure to do things. I mean, she would tell me at lunchtime, she'd have guys going up going, hey, we're going to the park to smoke up. You want to join? Right. She was on the hockey team, so she was in a different group, and it was, who spoke to who, and it was very, I found it to be very, it was like someone had written a script in a way, and you were watching sort of a teenage drama that you're like, that really doesn't happen. But it did. And she came home feeling, well, I can't, so-and-so doesn't want to talk to me next. They think about this and that. But it was a different kind of pressure where you were worried that, is some kid going to want to, beat the crap out of my kid for real this time around? Right. Never got to that point. But when I was in school, you got picked on because I was the smallest, I was scrawny, I was brown. Yeah. And you had to stand up for yourself, but it was a different kind of standing up.
So you're suggesting that today it's tougher?
I think it's tougher because there's very different kinds of pressures, and we're hearing more about issues of bullying. Yeah. We are seeing more kids looking at their sexual orientations and deciding whether or not they want to bring that out into the public sooner in life than I mean, when I was a kid, you thought it meant happy.
Right.
You didn't know what a lesbian was. You didn't know what a homo or transgender.
I can tell you, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah, but you didn't. And if someone said that to you, you're like, well, sure, I'm gay because I'm happy.
Right.
You didn't understand. You're like, well, isn't it just another word? I don't understand. Right. But now, well, hey, I've got a friend who's gay, and he's so awesome, and he's so cool. Or I have a friend who's gay, and he's going through a lot, or she's going through a lot.
I want to see the day when somebody is able to say, I've got a friend and she's going through a lot, and not even have to mention gay. Mm-hmm. Not because it's assumed, not at all, but because the person with whom you're engaging about that would be asking questions about, what's the issue? And, is there anything I can do to help? Mm-hmm. Can I mentor this person, right? Instead of sort of hands off and, whoa, that's kind of weird and I don't need that kind of energy. Right. So, and I think that increasingly we have the opportunity to get our kids to the point where they see that they live in a world in which they are interdependent, and that we all actually need each other. Mm-hmm. And that community, by the way, doesn't have to be defined, again, by the labels into which we are born, but actually can be also defined by the values that we've decided to adopt for ourselves, the values that we've chosen. And so I remember, at the event in which I was addressing the question, is multiculturalism bad for women? A Quebecer man got up and said that here's why I, as in he, not me, supports the Charter of Secular Values. And he talked about how we, but he didn't define we, are getting smaller and smaller in number, and soon there won't be any of us left. And I said to him, but wait a minute, sir. I'm assuming that you're for secularism, and by the way, I am too, meaning separation of church and state. But I see you as part of my community because we share those values. Interestingly, I don't think you see me as part of your community, right? Yeah. Because you're defining your community in a very limited way, and that's your choice. I'm not upset about not being part of your community, but then don't tell me that you're not operating from a place of fear, right? Because you quite clearly are. Yeah. So let's have that talk. Let's get real. Let's get honest about that.
And that's obviously what you're going to be doing with these teenagers.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And I have to say that these teenagers, as part of the Moral Courage Symposium that we're having at the end of April, they're not, by and large, in my experience, coming from a place of fear. Not about each other. Mm-hmm. The fear that they do have, however, is about being told, "Whoa, you can't think that way. You can't go there. Oh my God, that was such a stupid question. How can you even ask that?" And frankly, I think that, today's students have been socialized to believe that only a question that is comfortable for all concerned can be asked. And I say, what a precious waste of breath. If the only questions you're asking are the comfortable ones, then really what new are we learning?
And we're not teaching our kids because there's a lot of discomfort that's out
That's
there.
Right.
There's
That's right.
a lot of discomfort.
And I have to bring it all back to this notion of creativity and innovation, because that really is the bigger picture here. The great thing is we live in a country in which you and I, and again, our nieces, nephews, and children, have the freedom to think for themselves. And although that's not the case in all families, increasingly that is becoming the case. And so why should we put a limit on that thinking? Let individuality, I don't mean individualism, I mean individuality, that I am my unique self, and by expressing that uniqueness, I actually enrich my society. Let individuality flourish, and let that be the way that stereotypes are broken. Not by wagging a finger at somebody and saying, you can't say that. That's not the way stereotypes are broken. That's the way defensiveness rises. But let individuality, uniqueness, bust the stereotypes, and in addition, show all of us that we're capable of contributing to the bigger picture that is Canada.
You know what? It's always amazing chatting with you. Always wonderful. And we're looking forward to keep following you and seeing what else that you're doing.
Mother of a 19-year-old? How does that... I know how that happens, but how does that happen?
Check out Irshad's website. So there's the Moral Courage website. Also, www.irshadmanji.com.
Yes.
You can find out all about what she's doing, what's going on next. Follow her, read about her. Thank you very, very much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, friend. Appreciate it.